Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the announcer's booth with the best damn announced team, period. I'm Greg Hunter, and here's your host, John the Body Johnson.
Well, hello, everyone. That's right, John the Body Johnson, back with the announcer's booth. Season number 3, of course, it's 2 years in the making, but we're back with season number 3, John the Body Johnson, joined by the newly married Greg Hunter. It's been a couple months, but hey, newly married, living La Vida marriage, sir.
La Vida marriage?
Yes. I don't know the marriage word for Spanish.
Sure, we'll go with that. No,
or for some people, the Spanish word for marriage, not the marriage word for Spanish, yeah.
So, yes, Deb, I am married now, which anyone else that listens to the other shows that appear on our network probably already know that. That is one thing that is new. We're on a network now.
We are.
So
How the hell did this happen?
I started one.
Oh.
We are part of the ECS network, which is, as mentioned in the other shows on the network, basically a bunch of opinionated geeks or other fan-related individuals. I don't think you would consider yourself a geek. You are one, but
nah.
It's just a matter of what are you a geek for. And on this show, we're geeks about wrestling and other stuff. One thing, just so people out there who have keen ears trying to listen, no, there's not another guy out there who has Mike Brown's voice. I am Mike Brown.
Thank God for that.
For the people out there who listen to the other shows on our network. So if you listen to Denzi Caster, if you listen to Rage Quit Radio, same guy. I'm not the host. That's the other fat dude. And
that's me.
And for this show, we just use, it's wrestling. And in wrestling for 11 years, and I guess now I can rightfully say for 14 years, because I now keep one foot, dangled over the pool of the business. I'm Greg Hunter. So if you're a wrestling fan, how you doing? Welcome back to the booth. Well, I thought this was supposed to be season 4.
Well, it should have been season 4, but there would have been no season 3 if we did season 4. See what I'm saying? This is actually season 3.
This is actually season 3.
This is actually season 3. Here's the thing, and for you people who have listened to us for a while, I know that you've listened because I've gotten messages on Facebook, I've gotten some tweets that ask, hey, when you guys going to do that again? When you guys going to do the announcer's booth again? Because they've really enjoyed it, and we really enjoyed doing it. But here's the thing. Let's be honest. I'm married, father, husband. I've got a lot of stuff to do. Hunter's recently married, so he's got a lot of stuff to do. We have a lot of stuff in our personal lives. And also, Hunter and I live about 45 minutes away, so getting together to do this is really a difficult task sometimes. We used to do it over the phone, but hey, thanks to Windstream Internet, and by the way, this is going to be my first ever Season 3, Episode 1, fuck you to Windstream, because they are probably the worst by God internet I have ever seen in my entire life. Let me tell you people, I can't stream, I barely keep a fucking connection at my house. Pardon the language, but no, don't pardon the language. I can barely keep a connection at my house. So this is what we got to do. We used to Skype these things. We were in 2 different areas. We would Skype, we'd get these things done. But now, we had to take breaks from our work to do this. And that's actually what we're doing now. Hunter and I work in the same location. We work in the same company. And we're on our lunch break. We'll probably be late going back from lunch. So if you listen to us at work, sorry, we were late. This is what we were doing.
And hi, Mel. How you doing?
Hey. Yeah. But no, this is going to be an enjoyable thing here. We've kind of rehashed what we want to do. We've kind of gone over things. And one of the things that I want to talk about that we're going to do, and we'll get into this a little bit later also, is fantasy booking.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter and I have had numerous conversations. In fact, fantasy booking is exactly how the cast here, the webcast, the podcast, was born. The announcer's booth was born out of fantasy booking 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
We would sit around, we talked about who some of our favorite champions were, what we would do in these situations, what ifs. And that's kind of what we're going to bring you. The main segments on these are going to be big what-if scenarios.
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of fantasy booking. If we want to give credit where it's due, we got to give credit to Shadow Jackson. Because who inadvertently, and I may never forgive him for this, got me and JJ both the booker's job at Anarchy at one point in time because of this very reason. He would come up randomly at shows and say something along the lines of, it's 1984, Greenville Memorial Auditorium, Jim Crockett Promotions. Main event is Tully Blanchard versus Denny Brown for the World Junior Heavyweight title. Sell out the house. And that was the challenge he would lay down to us. In fact, I think that might actually have been one of the challenges he laid out to us. And JJ and I would come up with different ideas for how we would sell out a house with that match. And that got overheard by Iceberg. And apparently entertained him no end. And so when Iceberg became the booker at Anarchy, he brought me and JJ on board as his assistants because of those conversations. And then eventually I wound up booking Anarchy because of those situations and
others.
and others, and wound up leaving the business for about 4 years. But no, I played the Champions of the Galaxy game by Phil Singer Games for years. It's a wonderful game. It's been around forever at this point. I think almost 30 years. And they, several years ago, came up with Legends of Wrestling, which took real-life personalities and transferred them over to that game. And it's a wonderful game, wonderful format. I encourage people to go out there and check it out. It's philsingergames.com, or you can go to cotgonline.com to play the digital version of it.
They send us a check yet?
No, but I'm going to give them a plug because otherwise it would take a long-ass time to do these fantasy booking things. Because that's going to be the interesting challenge to our fantasy booking. We're booking the show, but we're not booking the finishes. The finishes are a shoot, and that is the challenge for us. So we come up with the storylines and the programs, but it is going to essentially be luck. It's going to be a roll of the dice as to what the finishes are to the matches. So that's going to be the curveball. We don't have the luxury of the fans shitting on something or the fans really loving something to tell us which direction to go. So that random element, so to speak, is going to be played by the dice. And so that's something we'll do off and on here on the show as we go along.
Right. And which brings me to my point of what I love to do in booking. Now, I love booking. I've actually, before Anarchy, I booked with Berg before in a couple other places. I've actually been a booker for a couple other promotions where I worked. And that's great. But one of my things that I always love to do is I love to be the guy to clean up the mess. When there is something that goes south or something goes bad, I love that, like, on the fly, last minute thinking, what can we do? How can we make this work? Because here's the thing. When you don't have a lot of time, when it's like, okay, here's the first thought that pops in my head, let's do it, let's put it there, let's see if it sticks. That is what tests your mettle as a booker. That is what really gets you to the point, because here's the thing. You don't have a chance for this to play out in your mind how this is going to work. It's literally, there's a guy sitting at the curtain. The shit that you wanted to do can't be done now. So you say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put this guy and this guy, go out there and just do it. And they go out there and they have a fucking phenomenal match and it turns into an awesome program. You look like a fucking genius. The beautiful thing about this is, though, if it goes out and falls on its face, you don't look so bad because at least you had a plan there for the moment. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, let's regroup. When you're booking shit and you put stuff out there like the WWE is doing right now that just falls flat on its face, your bookers look like shit. And, well, let's face it, they don't have bookers anymore. They have writers. But, your guy looks like shit and everything looks bad. But, it's like, well, you didn't have a backup plan. But if you are the backup plan, then what the hell? You don't have anything to lose at that point. By the way, hold on. I just want to say one thing. We're recording this here at the Palatial Hunter Estates. And I forgot my lunch today. So Hunter gave me waffles that he told me were homemade. And I'm assuming that your wife...
Yes, my wife made them.
Your wife is fucking phenomenal with the waffles. And, since you missed my birthday, by a few days, I am just going to say that, we're recording this the week of Christmas. Christmas is in 4 days. Waffles make excellent fucking presents. That's all I'm going to say.
You know what? JJ, you keep talking. I'm going to be right back. If there's some background noise, I apologize.
No, don't leave me.
No, you keep talking.
Okay, so I guess I had to keep talking. And but, yeah, I mean, I will tell you, these waffles are something to behold. I mean, they're I didn't even need to put syrup on them. I did. I made a mistake of putting syrup on them, but they are delicious. But anyway, getting back to what we're going to do here with the announcers booth. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't going to be all fantasy booking. This is not going to be all fantasy this. What this is going to be is this going to be the same thing the Announcers Booth podcast was before. It's still going to be me ranting and raving, talking shit, doing whatever. And he just brought in a big blue
bag.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this big blue bag with reindeer on it. Now,
There's a reindeer. Well, there's a reindeer. There's supposed to be Christmas balls.
Yeah.
So,
but hold on, one thing. The last time I seen a bag this big, it had Hennessy in it.
This does not have Hennessy in it.
Oh,
though it's the right shape.
Yeah.
No, we are recording this the week of Christmas. Now, it's not going to go up until after Christmas. So this will be our first podcast of the new year.
Yeah. Happy New Year!
Yes. JJ, how was your Christmas?
It was good.
Yeah. Insert soundbite here.
Yeah.
But
it was bad. Christmas, it was raining.
Yeah.
Christmas, it was sunny.
No, Christmas, it was raining. That's probably a shoot. They're calling it 75 degrees and thunderstorms in South Carolina in fucking December. But anyway.
I'm looking forward to this.
I don't know how, we got 3 days at work before we get off for Christmas. And so I don't know if I'm going to have another opportunity. So Merry Christmas, good sir. That is your Christmas present. Feel free to go ahead and open it.
Is it waffles?
No, it's not waffles.
Oh.
I saw this and immediately thought of you, so.
Hold on. Wait a minute. It is
something for your desk at work during the holidays.
Oh! You know what? I know you people can't see this. In fact, I'm the idiot holding it up to the microphone right now. This is a Dallas Cowboy nutcracker. Now, yes, the Dallas Cowboys have been cracking my nuts all year long with the way they've been playing, but no, this is a physical nutcracker. It's like one of the little things like that goes. That is the Nutcracker Suite, right?
I think. You'd have to ask my wife. She's the music major.
Yeah. I just did the Nutcracker Suite, but this is a sweet Nutcracker. Dude, thanks, man. I really appreciate it, man. That's fucking awesome. That is going to definitely go on my desk for the holiday season, but I'm going to take it home, and it's going to stay on top of my TV until the Cowboys win a Super Bowl, which means this thing's probably going to collect a lot of fucking dust.
I dare say that the Clemson Tigers may win the national championship before the Cowboys win the Super Bowl.
Hey.
So...
Wait, man, it's been 34 years since Clemson's won anything. I mean, at least the Cowboys have won something in it hasn't been much longer than that, but
No, 34 years. The last time Clemson won the national championship was the year I was born.
1981,
yes. So.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually looking forward to that game. I was one of those guys that doubted Clemson because I'm a big Florida State fan as well. I doubted Clemson, and then they played us. And I started to see something. I just knew there was going to be that game. There was that trap game that they were going to have, that they were just going to slip up on themselves. But the thing is, they overcame. And they always overcame. And the thing is, and I'll say this, it was kind of like Florida State last year. We were the defending national champions going into the 2014 season. And we always had those games where it seemed like we was, slipping up. But we'd find a way to win. Of course, we get blown out by Oregon in the playoffs, which I hope doesn't happen to Clemson when they play Oklahoma. But if they do...
I'm kind of scared it does, but
when they do, and if they do trip up, I've already got Boomer Sooner queued up on my phone to play as I walk through our office full of orange.
That's fair, because the day that they beat Florida State, I came into the office playing Tiger Rag as I walked past JJ's desk. So that's fair.
Yes.
I'm not a huge football fan. My preferred sport is baseball. But with Clemson... It is a little hard if you live here to not get caught up in it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's been 34 years since Clemson got within, spitting distance of the national title, much less actually wind up with the possibility of playing for it.
Question.
Yeah.
Had Reagan been shot yet?
81? No.
Reagan got shot in 82, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, think about that for a second. Reagan hadn't even been shot yet.
No, think about it like this. It was his first year as president.
Yeah.
So, it was the last time Clemson had a chance at the national title was not, will be Obama, but it wasn't George W. It wasn't Clinton. It wasn't George. It was Reagan the first time. We were barely out of Jimmy Carter. So,
yes.
But no, it's been such a long time for Clemson, and they've gone through some shit over the years. Tommy Bowden was ridiculed as Clemson's head coach for quite a while, even though most people tend to forget on a season-to-season basis, he was the winningest coach in Clemson history. He had more consecutive winning seasons as Clemson head coach than any other coach in history.
Hold on though. Speaking of Clemson coaches, and I know there's people that listen to this that don't live in the Carolinas, they don't live here in the upstate or the northeast corner of Georgia like I do and you do. But there's a commercial right now on Fox Carolina, that it's a tractor commercial for a local tractor company, and they somehow have Danny Ford as their spokesman. But it's set up like a sports thing, and there's like a little reporter outside, and she's like, we're sitting out outside the locker room with Danny Ford and his team of tractors, and he's giving them a pep talk. And then they go in, and Danny Ford is talking like he's talking to a football team, but he's talking to a team of tractors. And something clicked to me that I don't think this was supposed to be a commercial. I think Danny Ford is really delusional enough that he sits in front of a team of tractors and talks to them. Nice guy. Met him at Sam's Club here in Anderson one time. Was walking through, and I knew exactly who he was when I saw him because knew him from the Kia commercials here. Danny Ford's in every fucking commercial here, by the way.
Not every commercial, but he's in a lot of them.
He's in every fucking commercial.
He's not doing anything else these days.
Exactly. I'm getting old.
Danny Ford, I mean, he won the one national championship at Clemson and basically rode the gravy train for a while off of that.
Yeah.
And the battle cry whenever a Clemson coach does badly is bring back Danny Ford.
Right.
I forget who came right after Danny. That gives you an idea of how bad they were. They were obviously that forgettable. Tommy Bowden did a suitable job. I'll be honest. I was of the opinion that if we lost to Carolina this year, regardless of anything else, there would be people calling and screaming for Dabo Swinney's head because, and they've said this on ESPN before, and it's a sad state of affairs, really, that with Clemson football, they care about two things in this order: beat Carolina, win the ACC. That winning the ACC is secondary to beating Carolina, and just the fact that I would probably get fired eventually from being Clemson's head coach because I thought, and it was a couple of years ago, it might have been Dabo's first season. I said to my friends publicly, I was like, if I had been in his place, knowing that in 2 weeks I'm playing for the ACC title, this week I'm playing against Carolina, I would have sent the fucking second string down to Columbia to play Carolina. I kept the first string fucking at home watching game film on Carolina or watching game film on the ACC championship game.
Yeah.
Like, screw that. I don't give two shits about Carolina. I want the ACC title. And there are a lot of Clemson fans, boy, are they ever, because I heard it from every one of them, that like, oh, you got to beat Carolina. You got to beat Carolina. Look, Jeremy Vane, we talk about him from time to time on this show. Jeremy Vane is a diehard Carolina fan, and he's pulling for Clemson the rest of the year because it's like, fuck, they got a shot at the title, and they're the hometown team. But
see, now, me, I'm the complete opposite of that. I'm a huge Florida State fan, and I say, fuck the Gators, fuck the Hurricanes. I don't care. Just because you have Florida in your name doesn't mean I'm going to like you. I mean, because, I'm a Florida boy myself, but I'm not going to sit there and cheer for you just because you're from Florida. I'm a Florida State fan. In my world, I want Miami to lose every game. I want the Gators to lose every game. And then when we move into the ACC, I want Clemson to lose every game. I want Tech to lose every game. I don't care. That's the thing. I never understood that premise. And it's another premise I don't understand either, is people like me in the NFL. I'm a Cowboys fan. That's the only team I cheer for.
I'm so sorry.
I only cheer for the Dallas Cowboys. I never understood how people go, well, I'm a so-and-so fan, but I cheer for them too, and then I cheer for this team and that. If you sit there and you have 4 teams that you cheer for, there's 32 teams in the NFL. That means that you are cheering for 1/8 of the NFL, 12.5%. That means you have a 12.5% chance of cheering for the right fucking team.
Well, see, here's my philosophy. I will cheer for Clemson against everybody.
Right.
I will pull for Carolina so long as they don't play Clemson.
Okay.
That is the one time that I will pull for Clemson over Carolina, but the rest of the time I will pull for Carolina as long as they're not playing Clemson. And it's because they're both the hometown team, so to speak. They're both South Carolina teams. Now, that said, in baseball, as a for instance, now in baseball, which is a sport that I try to follow from time to time, I don't have MLB Network anymore, so it's a little hard.
Yeah.
I can understand having 2 teams because you have one per league.
Right.
That I get. Like AFC or NFC? Which one's the Cowboys?
NFC.
Okay, so I can understand having the Cowboys and then having an AFC team.
Right. Which I don't.
But I can
I don't.
But I can understand that.
Yeah.
Baseball, it's the Braves. That's NL East. It's the Angels, AL West, and it's whoever beat the Yankees last.
See now,
So that's how I wind up with the third team, is because I will cheer for anybody that plays the fucking Yankees.
See now, that's the funny thing. I'm just the opposite in baseball now. By baseball, which is the only exception to my rule, because now the thing is, like, I used to follow baseball religiously, and I used to be just a diehard Braves fan. Loved the Braves.
Right.
But I grew to be a Yankees fan.
I'm so sorry. Again.
So I love the Braves, and I love the Yankees, and I love watching. Now, when they play each other, I go for the Braves because that's my team. But
I'll catch some shit because if the Braves play the Angels, which will never happen, by the way, that will never be the World Series, the Braves and the Angels. I will be dead and in the ground for 50 years before that ever happens.
They play in interleague play, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But when they play in interleague play, whenever they play, my dream is for them to be the World Series.
Right.
But when they play each other, I pull for the Angels.
Right.
Because I lived in Anaheim for my first memories are of Anaheim, California. I was born in South Carolina, but my first memories are of Anaheim. But no, it's every time one of those two teams gets good, the other one starts finding new and more inventive ways to suck.
Like the Braves?
Yeah. So therefore you wind up, like I said, you'll never see the Braves and the Angels. And by the way, it is the Anaheim Angels. I don't give a fuck what they're called. They're the Anaheim Angels. They play in Anaheim. The stadium's in Anaheim. They are not in Los Angeles. Sorry.
Well, hey, fuck that. Let's go even more old school. They're the California Angels.
When I say, here's the thing. I can understand. This was the logic. They don't call them the California Angels. Here's where that fight started. Because you have the Angels, the Giants, the Dodgers, the Athletics, and the Padres. So there are 5 teams in California.
Right.
4 of those teams represent cities. 1 represents the entire state. So that's where the fight started, was you can't have one team be named for the state and have 4 other teams.
Right.
So they changed it to the Anaheim Angels. I'm cool with that. I'll go along. Because they've done that elsewhere. Because, for instance, the Florida Marlins had to become the Miami Marlins once the Tampa Bay Rays started.
Right.
So, and they've been consistent. The only exception to the rule is the Texas Rangers. They will always be the Texas Rangers because they're not named for the state. They're named for the institution of the Texas Rangers.
Right, of course.
So calling them the Arlington Rangers really wouldn't make any damn sense and wouldn't sound good either. So,
but they'd probably go with Dallas, though. They'd probably call them the Dallas Rangers.
I don't know, because they're actually really big on the fact that they're in Arlington.
Yeah.
But regardless, you had the Anaheim Angels. I'm cool with that. When Disney sold them off years and years and years ago, it became the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is the only team that has that ridiculous-sounding, strung-out, long-ass name in baseball. Because, as I understand it, they were bought by a guy that owns soccer teams. And that's the way you would name a soccer club.
Right.
It's the name of the major metropolitan city you're closest to, mascot of whatever city you're actually playing in. And I'm like, Anaheim is not a suburb of L.A. I hate to be the ones to break it to you, but it ain't. So, that was just one of those things that it irked me a whole hell of a lot at the time. But, no, it's... So if you hear me say the Anaheim Angels, it's because in my heart they're the Anaheim Angels.
Speaking of California baseball, I think, and here's the thing. I mean, it's no secret. Ratings are dropping for a lot of sports. I mean, football has remained consistent, but baseball over the years has kind of dropped off. And I really think that baseball is no longer America's pastime.
No, it's NASCAR.
Yeah, I think NASCAR is, they have, well, actually, if you think about it, if you go with pure numbers, the NFL will be America's pastime. Because, number one, you have 16 games a week. You're drawing anywhere from 40 to 80,000 people into these stadiums for 16 weeks at a time. NASCAR, you're drawing 150,000 people into, a thing. But this is what I was going to get to, though. Hold on one second, I'll let you get back to your point. Here's what I think we need. I think we need another California World Series. I think we need, another San Francisco-Oakland World Series. And then we need an earthquake. That's what we need. That is going to be what draws the race. Think about this for a second, though. But what if, here we go. Fuck the World Series part of this. What if every time a California team played, maybe like 1 in 10 times, there was like an earthquake? People would tune in just to see if a fucking earthquake's going to happen.
I am often kind of shocked the fact that there is not a California team called the Quakes or something like that, because it just seems natural. Now but I will bring up
natural disaster.
Yeah, there you go. The thing that I would mention, your comparison with football and baseball, and here's where I bring everything back to wrestling. I buy your point. You know what I honestly think would benefit baseball a lot?
What's that?
Less shows.
Yeah.
Because if you stop and think of baseball, they play 100 plus, I think roughly 150 games a year.
162.
Okay, 162 games a year for Major League Baseball.
And you do that over a period of 6 months.
Right. So you're doing all these games. I mean, you're basically, and there's what, I think 32 baseball teams? So there's
30.
30? Okay, so there's 15 games, 15 to 16 games going on damn near daily for 6 months. Sometimes, if you take into account double and triple headers, more. Football, you have 16 weeks, right?
Yeah.
16 weeks, 16 games. That's it. And they all happen on the same day.
Well, now football has gone to
We have a Monday night.
You have a Thursday,
Thursday,
Sunday, and Monday. But like at this point of the season, you do Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the last few weeks of the season.
But Thursday and Monday are like the exceptions to the rule.
You get one game.
Those are the big games, the big draws, and then you got the rest of the games there. So Sunday's the undercard. Yeah. And Thursday and Monday are the main events.
Well, Sunday 1 o'clock is the undercard. Your 4:30 and your 8:30 games are what's big. But I agree.
I think if you just trimmed it down, I think you could do it, because if you stop and think about it, in baseball, the average conference, or in this case division of a league, is between 4 and 6 teams.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you play everybody twice in your division, and you play, we'll say, 3-game series against everybody, because you don't want to take out everything that makes baseball baseball.
Yeah.
Play 3-game series. You do, what, a 24-week season? Which is still 6 months.
Yeah.
But you could play everybody twice, still get a bunch of games in your league, and just play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just play the weekends, and that's it. And that's the only time you see baseball, is those days. And it's 3-day game, or 3-day series, and that's it. And you could reduce the season. You'd increase the longevity of the players' careers at that point. Probably have fewer injuries. And I think you'd actually wind up with more attendance, because I think part of the problem is we can go see this whenever. So,
yeah. Well, here's, and we'll get more into this after the break here, but one of the things that I think we could also see in baseball is, I liked when I was a kid, there were 2 divisions in baseball. You had the East, you had the West. You had the NL East, the NL West, the AL East, and the AL West. And the winners of those 2 divisions played in a 7-game series. And the winners of those 2 series... Originally, yeah. And the winner of those 2 series would play in the World Series. But, you know what? We can go to a break. We'll be right back after this. Hey, what's up, everybody? John the Body Johnson here, host of the Announcer's Booth podcast with my boy, Greg Hunter. I want to tell you folks about another great podcast here on the ECS network. That is Rage Quit Radio. Greg Hunter's alter ego, Mike Brown, hosts that show with America's favorite black man, Chris Brown, Justin Spearman, Dennis Lee, and Rich Morrow, and a host of other characters coming through. If you're a fan of tabletop gaming, this is the podcast for you, and it can be found only here on the ECS Network family of podcasts. That's Rage Quit Radio. Check them out, but of course, after you've checked out the Announcer's Booth. All right, everyone, we are back here for segment number 2 of the Announcer's Booth. John the Body Johnson, joined as always by Greg Hunter. And Greg, we were talking during the break, about some of our baseball talk, but we're going to move on from that. We're going to talk a little wrestling now. That's what we are. We're a wrestling podcast. But before we get into our main event segment, so to speak, of the fantasy booking, I'm going to talk a little bit. We're filming this the week of Christmas. It's 3 days before Christmas now, 4 days. We're a few days before Christmas.
Right.
But... this is a time of year that I used to always look forward to. I'm from Atlanta. As you know, in my teenage years, and as I got a little bit older, we moved to Atlanta from Florida. But Christmas was always an exciting time of year because there was always the big holiday show at the Omni. I know in Charlotte they always had holiday shows. I mean, there was holiday shows just about everywhere. But I think it's a dying breed. I think the week of Christmas seems to be almost an off week for wrestling now.
it's an off week for wrestling. Every major holiday now is an off week for wrestling. If you stop and think about it, back in the day, and I really realistically, this is probably hasn't been the case since almost the late '80s. That on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, Easter, Memorial Day, Labor Day, the 4th of July, you named it, a major holiday was usually capped off with a wrestling show.
Yep.
And the logic was always, by a lot of the old-time promoters, your Fritz Von Erichs, your Eddie Grahams, your Jim Crockett's, and so on, that you spent Christmas morning opening presents, you spent the midday afternoon eating food, and every damn thing is closed, so what are you going to do Christmas night? Go to the matches. What else are you going to do? And it was in a time and place where movie theaters weren't open,
right?
Drive-ins weren't open, the internet does not exist, and all these things. It was the common form of entertainment on a holiday weekend. I mean, I think I didn't go to Anderson, South Carolina has never been a hotbed of professional wrestling as far as something being in town all the time. We were a constant stop for Jim Crockett. We were a routine stop in the early days of WCW, and over the years, we've had a handful of independent promotions in Anderson, but we never got any of the holiday shows or anything like that. So I never really experienced that as a kid. But look back in history, you had Christmas Star Wars.
Yes.
Of course, Star Wars seemed to be the only name that Fritz Von Erich could come up with for a big show, because they had Christmas Star Wars, Easter Star Wars, then they had Labor Day Star Wars, they had New Year's Star Wars. They had a lot of Star Wars, but they had more Star Wars than George Lucas. But, they would do that in Texas with World Class. And originally, Starrcade was the Thanksgiving Day tradition, and it was always on Thanksgiving Day.
Well, even Survivor Series
did the same thing.
Did the same thing for a few years.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, now me living in Atlanta, there was always a Christmas night show at the Omni.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always a big show. It wasn't... This is before pay-per-view now, you've got to remember. This was a big house show.
Mm-hmm.
But it had a big show feel to it. But I can remember, I want to say it may have been late... No, it had to be maybe early to mid-90s. The last Christmas show I remember actually going to, there was hardly anybody in the Omni. And it was, it was poor booking, say that, poor promoting, whatever. But there wasn't a lot of people in the Omni. But then what the true tell sign was, and I want to say this may have been 96, maybe just a little bit before. The last Christmas show I remember is I go to the Omni to go to the Christmas show, and it had been canceled.
Yeah.
It was, there was no notice. It was just I went to the ticket window to go into the, to go in the Omni, and the show had been canceled. And to me, to think about how, we talk about these huge gates they would draw on this. In fact, Kerry Von Erich against Ric Flair with Michael Hayes as a special guest referee took place on Christmas night 82.
I think, yeah.
It was 1982. It was a huge cage match. It was a huge deal. It was the match that actually started the feud with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds. And they packed out. They packed out Reunion Arena. I mean, there was 20,000 people hanging from the rafters, as they say.
And it would be the holidays back in the day in wrestling were the pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
We think of it today. A pay-per-view today,
too many.
Yeah, there's way too damn many of them. But if you look at the concept of professional wrestling, and I think this is a lost concept now, of the big show, and I don't mean Paul White. The big show is the show that A, wraps up a lot of your ongoing stories, and B, catapults the next set. For instance, if you look at something like WrestleMania, I mean, that's the biggest show of them all. WrestleMania wraps up an ongoing angle, but creates new angles. So, even looking at this year's, the angle going in was Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. And granted, it was something of an unsatisfactory blow-off, because if you're looking just at that angle alone.
Yeah.
But it ended that chapter and started the next one with Seth Rollins cashing in and winning the world title. And if you look back at, we'll use the holiday Star Wars, I don't know if they called it Star Wars at the time, but the Von Erich Flair cage match with Hayes as the referee.
It was Star Wars.
It was Star Wars.
Yes.
Then in that one, it was a happening because it's Kerry Von Erich getting a shot at the World's Heavyweight Championship, which at the time, almost no territory had a world champion in residence, unlike you do today. And the world champ comes to town, Kerry Von Erich gets the shot, and what happens afterwards sets Texas on fire and feeds the territory for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
well, actually, you can go even further than that. I mean, the Von Erich Freebird feud lasted, God, what, forever?
I think 84, 85. It's
Well,
about 2 or 3 years.
Well, I mean, but you go even further from that because you think about it. There was always a Von Erich Freebird feud when Kerry joined forces with Michael Hayes to take on Terry Gordy and Iceman King Parsons. There was that rift with the Freebirds, but then it ended up coming right back to the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. I mean, it was something that gave people, for the better part of the decade of the 80s,
Sure.
from that night to the end of the 80s, there was always some kind of intertwining with the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, and they just didn't get along. And to me, that's brilliant.
Yeah. But that traces you back, again, it started on Christmas night.
Right.
And so that idea of the big show as what it really should be, in the age of pay-per-view, originally the big shows for the WWE, there were 4. And it was Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Those are the big 4. That's the first 4 WWE regular pay-per-views. And everything would build up from the end of WrestleMania until SummerSlam. Everything built to SummerSlam. From SummerSlam until Survivor Series, everything built to Survivor Series. From Survivor Series to the Rumble, and so on. The only exception to the rule, realistically, might be WrestleMania itself, because from WrestleMania night, while the immediate build was to SummerSlam, everything built back to WrestleMania. And now, if you look at the WWE, they have WrestleMania. No other pay-per-view means anything, I don't think. NXT TakeOver means more than a lot of the average WWE pay-per-views, and is a better show. And then TNA, I don't think has ever really had a pay-per-view that I looked at and went, "This is the show of shows. This is what everything builds to."
There's nothing in TNA, to me, it goes far beyond a pay-per-view. And I don't want to get off the subject here, but it's the thing with TNA is they do nothing to grab my attention and make me want to watch. TNA, now like I said, I'm not going to take away from the talent there. They've got a talented roster. They got a lot of guys on there that can go. They got a lot of guys on there that are great in the ring. It's, once again, it comes to bad booking. It comes to bad positioning. And, I don't know if they're just snake bit. I don't know what it is. But it's, even when they were pulling guys from the WWE at their prime, like Christian and guys like this, there was nothing that ever compelled me to sit down and watch a TNA broadcast, with one exception. And that's when I knew that I was going to have a buddy of mine on TNA, like a Gunner or like an Austin Creed. If they were on the card, I would watch, because that's a buddy of mine.
Well, TNA is an interesting animal, but I'll finish the first thought first.
Go ahead.
Big show is a big show because of what you do there and what comes out of it, and now it's a lost art. Some independent promotions do a pretty good job of it. I will say, with a small amount of bias, I always thought Hostile Environment at Anarchy was a good example of a big show, because everything built to Hostile Environment. It was actually the longest gap between big shows was from Hardcore Hell to Hostile Environment. And you left Hostile with just as many questions as you had answers.
Yes.
But it also ended on a high. So that was always a really good big show. And other big shows on the in-between. Fright Night was a big night, but it didn't have the same vibe. Seasons Beatings was a big night, but rarely had the same vibe.
Seasons Beatings was one of those shows, with the exception of the year that we had the NWA World Title at Seasons Beatings when Adam Pearce came in to defend that title. Mm-hmm. With that exception, and this is not to take away from any work that anybody ever did there, because the work was always phenomenal. Mm-hmm. To me, Seasons Beatings was one of those things where, okay, we're going to put on a show, we're going to do some showcase matches,
right?
But this is our Christmas gift to the fans. Sure. It's not, if something comes out of this, great. If, the build to it was okay. Now, the Seasons Beatings that we did in Helen, that had a big show feel to it. Because it was a different venue.
Bigger venue.
Yeah, but to me, it was always like, when you looked at that card, all those matches on there were fucking phenomenal, but it was like, okay, if we don't get anything out of this to go into Hardcore Hell, we'll start building at the beginning of the year, but Merry Christmas to the fans, these are the matches you want to see.
And that's well and good to a point.
Yeah.
But the two shows that at Anarchy that mattered most were Hardcore Hell because of the legacy, and then Hostile Environment because it was, as I coined during my time there, the Anarchy original. It was Anarchy's one and only true Anarchy big show because we inherited the rest.
And proud also to know, speaking of Hardcore Hell, and cheap plug here by the way, Why We Wrestle, which is going to be the promotion going forward there at the Church of Southern Wrestling in Cornelia, the former home of Anarchy. Hardcore Hell will be kept as one of the showcase events. It'll be in March. Of course, I'll plug more on here on the podcast as we go forward. But I just want to let you know, because you mentioned that. Yep. I think it's great. And here's the thing about Hardcore Hell. Hardcore Hell started out in NCW.
Right.
It went to NWA Wildside. It went to NWA Anarchy. And then when we had to drop the NWA part of Anarchy, it went to Anarchy Wrestling. And now it's going to be part of Why We Wrestle. 5 promotions.
Well, 5 brands.
5 brands. 5 brands. What? 4 different owners?
I would probably more than 4.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Because it was Steve Martin, Bill Behrens, Jerry Palmer, Franklin Dove, Charles Anschutz, and now whoever the mysterious owner of Why We Wrestle is. But
Zero.
Oh,
okay. His name. Zero's his name.
But well, whatever the count has, I don't know. 0, 82, 64, height. But no, but the fact that it's, I don't know if someone coined it before me. It was the term I used. I tried to come up with nicknames for all the big shows to just give them something extra. So Hostile Environment was the Anarchy original. I don't think I ever came up with one for Seasons Beatings. Now that I think about it, I think it was just Seasons Beatings. Fright Night was the scariest night of the year. Hardcore Hell was the longest running super card in independent wrestling, because it is. When we did our first one, it had been around for 10 years. Yeah. Or no, I think our second one had been around for 10 years.
Well, no, our first one under the Anarchy banner, it was the 10th Hardcore
Okay, it was Hardcore Hell.
But I have been a part of Hardcore Hell since 2004.
Yeah.
Actually, technically 2003, but we'll go with 2004 as my first official soiree, so to speak, into Hardcore Hell.
Is that the one with Christopher Daniels?
I believe so.
Then that was my first one too, because I wound up ring announcing one of the 2 nights.
Yeah.
But at any rate, just that's something we can turn into a whole discussion later. The lost art of a big show, but
Christmas
in general, yes.
Yeah.
But one more thing about TNA, we birdwalk a lot on this show, folks. In case you hadn't noticed. You know what I think? I'll be honest. When it comes to TNA, I couldn't tell you what's wrong with them. On a whole. There are those out there who will occasionally retweet my broadcast partner who would tell you that it was Vince Russo. There are also those out there who would probably sing Vince Russo's praises that would tell you it was Jim Cornette. I think everyone can agree on a certain level it's probably Dixie Carter. But ultimately, and it's something I don't understand, having been a booker myself, I don't understand how you have a stable full of stallions and you fuck it up that bad.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And it's, you can't blame the talent, because if you stop and look at it, Kurt Angle was a main event star on the biggest stage of them all long before you ever got him. Christian Cage was a top star on the biggest stage of them all, granted as a tag guy, long before you ever got him. Bobby Lashley got a main event push. AJ Styles was and still is to this day probably the biggest star in independent wrestling. And you've had these guys among others. How did this go so awry? And I truthfully think it's, and you can't even look at, it's whoever's in charge of the writing, and I assume it has to be Dixie at this point, because if you stop and even look at the booking team, Dutch Mantell is a brilliant booker. I mean, absolutely brilliant. He freaking turned Puerto Rico on its ear.
Yeah.
You have, which, I mean, that's a bloodthirsty and somewhat jaded audience, and he turned them on its ear. Terry Taylor, far from an ignorant man. Terry Taylor, one of the most talented hands in the business, got a great mind. And then...
And Bill Dienblocks.
Who?
Bill Dienblocks.
Oh, yeah. You have...
Some people might get that, but...
Others won't.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're welcome. You've had, Vince Russo, for all of his faults, I'll give Vince Russo credit for one thing. He has never claimed to be a booker. Ever. He tells you he's a writer, and he does draw a difference between them. But Vince Russo's had some really good ideas. Now, granted, he needs a filter, which he had, Vince McMahon, for years. That's why what you saw in the WWE and what you saw in WCW were wildly different animals. You saw one good segment out of 15 bad ones in WCW, and it's in WWE, you never saw that, and it was because someone stopped the 15 bad ones from going on the air.
Exactly.
But you have so many good minds, and of course, Jim Cornette, Jeff Jarrett,
Jerry
Jarrett. You've had so many great minds there, and for it to go so far south so fast, to the point, are they even still on TV?
They are. Their deal with Destination America ends, I think, this week, but then they got picked up by Pop TV.
Okay, so
but and also, you talk about the great minds that were in TNA. Hold on one second. Hold on, I got to throw this out there real quick.
I'm going to forget my line if I don't.
Go ahead.
Never has the word "check your local listings" meant more.
Yeah. No, but with TNA, talking about the great minds, one of them that we've had the privilege of working with is Bill Behrens. Bill Behrens worked with TNA for a long time. And, to me, they had so many great resources there that I felt that maybe they didn't tap enough into, or maybe there just wasn't enough. Where did it go wrong for TNA, I think? Because, you think Hogan's where it went wrong?
I don't think Hogan specifically, but I think...
Do you think Dixie Carter?
Well, no, Dixie Carter definitely, but I think I can... If you ask me where I started to completely lose interest... Actually, you know what? I'll tell you exactly where I lost interest. When they left the NWA.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because if you look, you can almost pinpoint the moment. Because if you look before that, you had Christian Cage as the top guy in the company. Mm-hmm. Which, yes, he was a star at the WWE. He was never the world champion. He was never the main event. He had never been built to that. You had Jeff Jarrett, Christian Cage as a main event match, which was two solid workers, could get in, go, deliver on a mic, deliver in the ring. Hell of a main event. You had Kurt Angle coming up and coming into TNA. You had the Dudley Boys, but the Dudley Boys were in with who? Stop and think about this for a minute. You had the Dudley Boys working with Beer Money or America's Most Wanted or the Nat or whoever. They were working with these various tag teams throughout, or Team Canada. You would have Christian Cage and Jeff Jarrett, which was a fresh matchup. You had a lot of fresh matches up and down the card, and I think when you start to see the influx of a lot of WWE talent and then WCW style, let's bring everybody in that was ever a name, and then you start losing the fresh matchups because, God bless him, for every Hulk Hogan you give airtime to, mm-hmm. that means Motor City Machine Guns get nothing. For every, for every Booker T that you put in a main event program, that means there's a Petey Williams that's not working that night. And rather than do what they had been doing up to that point, cherry picking some underutilized talent, in some cases, bringing in some main event caliber talent that had never been put in the main event picture, and then mixing and matching them with the bulk of their own roster, we start getting a lot of tired stuff.
Yeah.
And we've seen this on a bigger stage with better production value. It's kind of like if you went and saw Star Wars in theaters, and then your local playhouse is going to put on Star Wars on stage.
Right.
It's the same story, might even have the same actors, but instead of having the really nice special effects with the lightsabers going voom, 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 instead you have two guys with painted broomsticks on stage making the sound effects with their mouths as they swing them. It somehow loses the magic. So
that's true. Well, somehow we went from the magic of the holidays to the lost magic of sabers with your mouth. So that's going to take us to our next break. When we come back, the main event segment, we are going to delve into Fantasy Booking 101 right after this.
Hello, wrestling fans. Greg Hunter here from the Announcers Booth podcast, but I'm going to slip out of that alter ego. This is Mike Brown, the host of Electric City Sentai Denzi Caster, encouraging you to join us right here on the ECS network twice a month as we walk into the wonderful world of Tokusatsu. Join myself, Dave Fleshman, Joe Budnick, Roger Broom, Richie Loftus, and a host of others as we look at giant monsters, superheroes, superhero teams, and a whole lot more from the land of the rising sun, right here on the ECS network. It's Electric City Sentai Denzi Caster, but first, you really should finish listening to the announcer's booth.
All right, everyone, we are back, and now it is time for us to get into what we've been hyping up for most of this podcast. It is the newest feature, I guess you could say, of the Announcers Booth podcast, even though we said this is what the Announcers Booth podcast was founded on, and that is our fantasy booking, our scenarios, our what-ifs. And now what we've done is we've taken our scenarios, our what-ifs, who was the greatest this, who was the greatest that, what would have happened if Magnum TA never got hurt, all that shit, and then we took our fantasy booking of, well, let's put these matches together. We've combined this with the one caveat that we don't know what the results are going to be until we roll them. And since this is Greg Hunter's big thing, first of all, let me explain. Greg Hunter actually introduced me to this Legends of Wrestling concept. Now, I remember seeing Champions of the Galaxy, which is also a Phil Singer game, in all the old Aftermags back in the late 80s, early 90s. Remember seeing those. And just never really, it was one of those things that never really caught on to me, although fantasy booking did. My friends and I, we used to fantasy book all the time. That's another story for another time. But I'm going to toss it over right now to Greg Hunter, who is going to kind of give you the rundown. Now, Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to discuss the roster and how we came up with the roster and things like that. So, I mean, now here's the thing, and I promise I'm going to throw it to you. This roster is based off of cards that are available through Phil Singer games. These are actual playable characters through the Phil Singer game. So it's not like we can say, oh, hey, we want this person, this person. These are actually available sets through Phil Singer games. Once again, Phil Singer games, send the check.
Yes. So they moved recently. They used to be in Jamestown, New York. I think they're in Arizona now.
Send the check. Arizona money spends just like New Jersey money.
Well, you might have just insulted them. It's never been New Jersey. But anyway, and to give everyone out there, anyone who wants to play along at home, so to speak, we're actually using cotgonline.com. And the sets that are available there are different than the physical ones you might buy. So the mix and match of who's in what set is a little different. But what we did, we took every Legends of Wrestling set. Now, Phil Singer Games also does sets for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Chikara, Ring of Honor, CZW, a couple other places. We left all of those out. So this is literally just the Legends of Wrestling sets. There are some new names in here because they were included in some of the sets, but we are restricting ourselves to that. And literally what JJ and I did one day at lunch at work, kind of like how we record the show, we sat down and went through the entire Legends of Wrestling roster, everything they had from every online set. And we started saying, we like this guy, we like this guy, we like this guy. And then the list just got narrowed and narrowed and narrowed until we had what we felt was a reasonably sized roster.
And we're not talking about fucking WCW 1996 to 2000, where like half the fucking country was on the WCW payroll.
Oh, yeah.
No, we're talking about a manageable roster of. Did we go with 40?
I think it was closer to 30.
Okay.
But if you count in managers and such. So, we have our babies, we have our heels, we have our tweeners, we have our managers, we have our ladies, we have our tag teams, all that good stuff. So looking at the faces, and I'll read off some names, and any of them that you, I guess, had a particular fondness, want for these guys to be in here as baby faces, we can talk about. But our babyface roster consists of Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors. Blackjack Mulligan, our ode to Jeff G. Bailey, in case he listens to the show. He doesn't, but just in case. Daniel Bryan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Diamond Dallas Page, Chris Candido, Tiger Mask, which for the purposes of the card game, for anyone out there who's curious, it is Tiger Mask number 1. So it's Sayama. It's the original Tiger Mask. Rob Van Dam, Nigel McGuinness, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Bobo Brazil, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and the Masked Superstar. So those are our baby faces. And on the female side, because we do have a small female roster as well, the female side for baby faces is Tina Moretti, a.k.a. Ivory, Molly Holly, and Rockin' Robin.
Yeah, and, the thing is, like, with the baby faces, to me, it was like, we had to combine the elements of the original, the original character itself. Was this character ever a babyface? Was this character ever a heel? But also because of the historical elements on it, because you're mixing guys from the 60s, guys from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now. God, sounds like a radio station. Guys from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now! Right here! But no, what we're doing is, you want to have a little bit of that element of, what if this guy was to meet this guy? Who would be more into the crowd of the babyface? Who's going to be more of the heel? To me, I thought it was a no-brainer to make Blackjack Mulligan a babyface.
Right.
Just, because in our mind, and in our fantasy world, we're booking the Mid-Atlantic territory. And it's kind of, you're booking it now for a crowd back then. So you have to mix those elements. And Blackjack, to me, was, the one guy that I thought would be, the great babyface. Chris Candido was another guy who I thought should be a babyface. And, of course, can't have no baby face unless you got Tommy Wildfire Rich, baby. You know what I'm saying, baby?
Careful, he's going to want us to pay him now.
We're going to fire it up, baby. Tommy Rich.
But, and see, I'm interested that you said that because I have a different philosophy. Yes, we are. One of the things JJ very much wanted to do is to have a home base. Where are we based out of? And we decided we're going to book the Mid-Atlantic area. That's where I grew up, and JJ more in the Georgia territory, but it eventually became part of Mid-Atlantic. So, Jim Crockett Promotions, if you will. But I look at it from the standpoint of in the here and now. I've got a time machine. I brought all the guys into the modern day from their prime. But I'm booking for a modern day audience. Right. So, when I looked at the roster, I wanted the mix. You need... Basically, we're in the South. You need, for want of a better term, you need the big redneck.
Yeah.
And that's Blackjack Mulligan all day long. He's the guy that you see at the bar that's going to beat the shit out of everybody there.
Right.
So you have the legitimate tough guy. I wanted some technicians, and so that's where like the Nigel McGuinnesses and the Daniel Bryans come in. You want... star power, so to speak. Well, that's your Randy Savages, or your Tiger Mask, if you look internationally. You want your Roddy Pipers. You want your talkers. So that's Piper all day long. Blackjack Mulligan was one of the greatest promos that ever lived.
Savage.
Oh, yeah.
Savage, here's the thing.
Couldn't understand a damn word he said.
Yeah, Savage, a lot of people talk about the Warrior, the Ultimate Warriors promos, and how they were like on a totally different plane of existence. Savage was like the next plane over.
Now I have to ask you a question. Did Randy Savage's promos over the years actually get better and more intelligible through their own merit or because Vince hired Warrior?
Wow. That's hard to say.
Did they actually get better, or because he hired Warrior, it was like, Randy's promo got better through no fault of his own because there was a shittier promo than him in the building. I shouldn't say shit because Randy was actually an awesome promo. You just couldn't understand 90% of what he said.
No, speaking of promos, and I remember showing you this video about a month ago, and I'm sorry to get off subject here. Jeff Farmer, the video, it's a look it up on YouTube. I can't remember the name of the promotion, maybe IWF, but the guy's name is Jeff Farmer, and the interviewer asked him the question, and his response was, "Yep. Now I'm mad." It's the greatest promo ever, and if I was running a promotion today, I would hire him to teach my guys how not to do promos. Yeah. Because I'd be like, look, just cut a promo, and whatever he does, don't do it.
Yeah, to use the old Bobby Heenan-ism, the Columbia School of Broadcasting hired him to be a bad example.
That's true.
But then you also I wanted some high flyers, I wanted some risk takers, and that's where like your Tiger Masks, your RVDs come in. And of course, if you can take the fucking Road Warriors, why aren't you booking the fucking Road Warriors?
Yeah.
So, there's your iconic monster, because there is no other monster on the babyface side, really.
Right.
And I like having a masked guy on the roster. Shout out to the Golden Eagle. That's how he got a spot a lot of times. I liked a good old school masked guy on the roster, and in this case, it's the Masked Superstar, because he's our good old school masked guy. On the heel side, we have Luke Williams and Butch Miller. For the record, this is not Cousin Luke and Cousin Butch. This is not the Bushwhackers, it's the Sheep Herders. We have the Bobby Eaton Stan Lane incarnation of the Midnight Express. We have Nick Bockwinkel, Antonio Cesaro, Kevin Sullivan, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins. We have AJ Styles. We have Eddie Gilbert. We have Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, the One Man Gang, Fit Finlay. We have, for the female side of that, Sensational Sherry Martel, Leilani Kai, and Mischief. So what stands out to you, good sir?
What stands out to me is having, on the heel side here, three guys who I said was going to be on this roster no matter what. Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, and Eddie Gilbert. Rick Rude and Kurt Hennig, number one, because I was always a Heenan mark. I thought those two guys were great in the Heenan family. Was really excited when I saw a picture in Main Event Wrestling magazine of Bobby Heenan with these two guys from a house show where they were teaming up. It was Rude and Hennig as a tag team. And I thought that after Hennig, was there, I was always hoping that Rude and Hennig would have been that tag team. I think that was a tag team that they really missed the boat on. I mean, of course, Hennig had the better shot being Intercontinental Champion. Rude, of course, shits himself away and gets let go shortly thereafter. But I always thought that would have been a great tag team. So I wanted to bring them here. And, in my mind, they're always a tag team. Rude and Hennig are always a tag team. I mean, they were best friends. They grew up together. There was, lots of great stories that came from those two growing up. And then Eddie Gilbert, who, now, granted, I'm not delusional. I know that, you can't actually grab Eddie Gilbert and have him here. But it's just having Eddie. Eddie Gilbert was a great heel. He was a great mind in wrestling. And he's somebody that, I think legitimizes your roster. And that may sound a little...
That sounds very odd is what it does, actually.
To me, I think Eddie Gilbert legitimizes your roster. Think about this for a second. Take a look at everywhere Eddie Gilbert's been. Now, granted, he's gone to established territories.
Right.
Eddie Gilbert was a star in Puerto Rico. Eddie Gilbert was a star in Memphis. Eddie Gilbert helped legitimize ECW. Eddie Gilbert, so to me, to say that's odd, to me it's not. The only places that Eddie Gilbert never really worked out in was his very short stint early on in the WWF, because he was mainly enhancement. And then, of course, in the NWA and WCW, he was just never really there long enough. And honestly, let's just face it, the reason why they took Gilbert there was A, because of his talent, but B, because he came with Missy. And you've seen that happen. Eddie gets let go. Missy kept a job for, 4 years after Gilbert was let go?
But Eddie's getting let go had a lot to do with Eddie being in the office. And there was a change of the guard in the office. And you know the story for how he got fired, right?
No, I don't.
Flair hated him.
I did not know that.
Flair became the booker in, I want to say, late 88, early 89, in what was essentially a power play. Flair was about disgusted. The company was on its ass. And Flair went to the Turner offices and said, "Give me the fucking booker, I walk," essentially. because it was to a point, and Flair never had any aspirations to be a booker, but it had gotten to a point where it's like, I can do this better.
Right.
I certainly can't do it worse. And they gave Flair the book, and initially your booking committee, as I understood it, was Flair, Gilbert, and I forget who else. And Flair one day spoke with Jim Cornette and said it was Flair, Gilbert, and Kevin Sullivan. And he spoke with Jim Cornette one day and said, do you want to be on the booking team? And Cornette said, sure. And Flair said, don't tell anybody yet. I just have to clean up a little bit first. And he fired Gilbert and put Cornette in his place.
Oh, wow.
So that's actually how Gilbert left WCW and how Jim Cornette got his first real crack at booking.
Wow.
So, but
well, I'll say this about Eddie Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
Had Eddie Gilbert lived, if Eddie Gilbert was still alive today, no doubt in my mind, Eddie Gilbert would have a job somewhere, possibly down in NXT, I think, working with guys, because I think Gilbert was that good.
I will say this about Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert was a hell of a hand. He was a fantastic worker. And keep in mind, when you call someone a hell of a hand in the wrestling business, some people think of that as a derogatory term. It's not. If you are a hell of a hand, you always have a job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you the main event guy drawing the top dollar? No. But you're in the fucking mix, and you mean something, and without somebody, if you don't have a lot of damn good hands on the card, you don't have a card.
Right.
So, not everybody is a John Cena or a Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair, and in some of those cases, those guys are hell of hands, but sometimes they're not, like Dave Bautista. First one that comes to mind. But I'll say this for Eddie Gilbert, and I'll move on to who I really wanted on here. With Eddie Gilbert, the bottom line is, I think if he were alive today, he would be in the same company, booking-wise. He would be looked at in the same company as a Dutch Mantel, as a J.J. Dillon, as a Jim Cornette, as a Paul Heyman. He would be in that company, not the Eddie Grahams, Dusty Rhodes, Bill Wattses, Vince McMahon's, Pat Pattersons of the world, but that next step down of truly great minds that may have never gotten to break out.
Yeah. But I mean, and listen to what you just said there. I mean, look at the company you just put him in.
Oh yeah,
that's top tier company. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh yeah,
but I know, and I understand what you're saying about the hierarchy of booking.
Right.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been on the same level as Vince McMahon because number one, he's not a billionaire.
Right.
He wouldn't have been there with Dusty or Eddie Graham because number one, he wouldn't have had the longevity that those two had. But definitely being there with like a Cornette, being there with a Heyman, being there with a Dillon. I mean, that's fucking complimentary right there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's saying a lot, especially when you think about what all those men have accomplished in the wrestling business, being at the head. But go ahead with yours. Who did you want in there?
I very much wanted Fit Finlay, because when I look at something like this, my mind works in matchups. These are the matchups I see that interest me. Fit Finlay is an Irish modern day Blackjack Mulligan.
Yeah.
So Fit Finlay and Blackjack Mulligan to me just is a natural dream match. You got to have Nick Bockwinkel is if you look at the evolution of the cocky, arrogant heel over the years, you go from a Gorgeous George to a Nature Boy Buddy Rogers to Nick Bockwinkel.
Right.
Bockwinkel's the next evolutionary step, and then the next one is Ric Flair. And you go through the evolution of that style character. And I'll say this, and it's going to be heresy to a lot of people. I found Nick Bockwinkel in many instances a better promo than Flair.
Oh, wow.
So, certainly a more believable promo than Flair. So, I like Kevin Sullivan a lot. I like Antonio Cesaro a lot. His work is outstanding. And Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, we have them both as heels because they're the Shield. And we actually are using them that way. We're putting them together as a tag team. So I like that.
With some pretty good ideas in mind down the road.
But you'll have to stay tuned for that.
Yes.
And then we do have our tweeners, and these are the guys that May have leanings one way or the other, but realistically, they can and probably should work everybody on the roster. We have Dr. Death Steve Williams and Terry Bam Bam Gordy, a.k.a. the Miracle Violence Connection, which was a name that JJ had never heard until we started doing this. We have Handsome Harley Race. We have the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Also, one babyface I forgot, we have PN News. You can blame JJ for that one.
Hold on. Here was my idea. Number one, I think PN News is completely underrated in the grand scheme of things. He never really made a big splash in WCW, but I think that there was something missing there that at the time WCW didn't really want to go for edgy. It was, I heard the story about how PN News got his name. His name was Paul New. Dusty saw him in Germany, I think it was. He brought him over, said, hey, we're going to make you the rap master. We're going to call you PN News, which was also a play on another Turner-owned entity, CNN.
And Headline News.
So you have PN News, PNN. And while I don't think PN News ever really took off, I mean, he'll always be remembered as a guy who was in one of the shittiest scaffold matches ever to exist in the history of fucking scaffold matches.
But the only pay-per-view scaffold match that Bobby Eaton ever won.
There you go. And it was the opening match.
Oh, God, yeah, it was.
So, here's the thing. My thought was, what if you took Big Jolly Happy Rap Master PN News and you pissed him off? And that's all I'm going to say right now. That was my selling point. That I thought there was a good program. I pitched a program to Hunter that Hunter did not fall in love with, but he didn't hate. And you can always tell when you've had a good idea because Hunter will go, I don't hate it. And what he's telling you is, and this is how I know because I've booked with this guy in real booking settings, is I've come to him with ideas and he goes, I don't hate it. Which means he likes it. He wants you to sell it to him even more and make sure that you have a closing in mind, which also was kind of like my thing with radio. I don't think he hated my thing with radio.
No, he hated your thing with radio.
No, Hunter didn't hate my thing with radio. It's just that it was misguided and misunderstood.
Well, to clarify, if I say I don't hate it, it sure as hell doesn't mean I like it. If I say I don't hate it, it means it may not be to my taste, but I see where it can sell. So now prove to me that it'll sell.
Right. Which, hold on, and being fair, by saying, prove to me it will sell. Now, in a real setting, this is, of course, our fantasy setting, but in a real setting, if you were to tell me that you don't hate it, that you see that it can go somewhere, if it's something that can make you money and it's something that can get you, somewhere, you're going to love it. You're going to like it because, here's the thing. Money from horrible booking, right? Well, let me rephrase that. Money from what seems like on paper to be a bad idea that people buy into spends just as good as the awesome ideas that people buy into.
Oh yeah,
it's the same money. It's the same $10, $15, $20, whatever you're charging for your tickets nowadays.
And we have our managers here. We have Bobby the Brain Heenan,
my pick,
who of course has the Heenan family, which in our setting consists of Nick Bockwinkel, Kurt Hennig, and Rick Rude. The Midnight Express, managed by Jim Cornette. Which in this version is Bobby Eaton, Stan Lane, and Sherry Martel. Because Sherry Martel was Jim Cornette's first charge ever in professional wrestling. And if you just go by the pattern of the nicknames, it does work. You have Beautiful Bobby, Sweet Stan, and Sensational Sherry.
Yes.
Aesthetically,
it sounds great.
Yes. And then we have Tammy Sitch, who is managing, and in this version right now, she just manages Chris Candido. But they are oddly baby faces.
And you left off one of the manager.
No, I didn't. Oh yeah, I did. Oliver Humperdinck. We have Oliver Humperdinck, who right now we don't have anything for him at the moment, but we know we have him on our roster. So right now, I'm going to give a preview because we don't have a whole lot of time left. But sometime soon on the ECS network, after this goes up on the air, you will start to hear the results of our first television taping. And to give you an idea, and we'll do this similar, I suppose, to the way I will probably do it on this thing, is the way Greg Hunter will return to the world of professional wrestling, albeit the fantasy world. It'll be, let's see here. See if I can remember how to do this without fucking it up.
You need a segue.
Oh, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, standing by right now with your preview for the first ever television taping is Greg Hunter.
Hello, wrestling fans. Coming soon, exclusively on the ECS Network, you are going to see the stars of professional wrestling come alive at our first television event. Saturday, some date in the near future, you will see in the World Heavyweight Championship quarterfinals, we will have Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert go one-on-one with no gimmicks needed. Chris Candido with the lovely Tammy Lynn Sitch in his corner. You will also see Tricky Nick Bockwinkel, member of the Heenan family with Bobby the Brain Heenan. He will take on the leader of the Yes Movement, Daniel Bryan. In quarterfinal action for the World Tag Team Championships, you're going to see the Sheep Herders take on the Miracle Violence connection of Terry Bam Bam Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams. You'll also see Tiger Mask team up with Rob Van Dam, the whole effing show, to take on Diamond Dallas Page and PN News in quarterfinal action. All that, fans, plus the one-man gang in action coming up soon on our next televised event.
Well, thank you, Greg Hunter. And like I said, we are running out of time here rapidly. So for this week, this is where we're going to leave it. We've given you the preview. You had the preview of our first TV taping. We'll have those results up here on the ECS network sometime in the near future after you've heard this. We'll have more Announcers Booth podcasts coming up after this. There's also all kinds of other great shows here on the ECS network. You have Rage Quit Radio, hosted by Greg Hunter's alter ego, Mike Brown, and a host of others. There is also the Denzicaster podcast.
I'm so proud you remembered that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
There's Electric City Sentai, Denzicaster, our somewhat regularly scheduled podcast about the wonderful world of Tokusatsu, and of course Rage Quit Radio. By the time this goes up, the second episode of Rage Quit Radio will already be up, but we've got some really cool stuff coming up down the pipe for Rage Quit Radio, because we're going to be doing the Batman miniatures game real soon. I think we're going to be doing some Pandemic Legacy real soon. These words mean nothing to JJ, but if you're a gamer, then they might excite you, and maybe you should check out that show. And of course, on Denzicaster, we're still in the midst, about halfway through the TV show Kamen Rider Drive. So check that out too. And of course,
I have no clue what any of this shit is, but it's pretty fucking awesome. So you need to listen to these guys because they'll get you hooked up. I listened to it. I still have no fucking clue what I'm talking about. I have no clue what they're talking about, but you know what? It excites me. But also, coming up on the ECS network in the very near future, you will see me all by my lonesome with body shots. I'll come in from time to time with little commentaries thrown here and there. All that here on the ECS Network family of podcasts here on YouTube.
So folks, until next time on the Announcers Booth, he's John Johnson, I'm Greg Hunter, and we'll see you next time in the booth.
Wugga wugga wugga.